Albany had a bad rap for a very long time because of the politics, for one thing, but also even way back in the building of the Capitol in about 1870s. Stanford White, the great architect, was working on the Capitol, and H. Richardson, a lot of other major architects. This would prove to be the most expensive building on the American continent, $25 million when it was declared finished in 1997 by Teddy Roosevelt. And Stanford White came here somewhere around 1872, and he said, of all the terrible things, I've got to spend another night in Albany. He said, of all the one-horse towns, this is the absolute worst. And it was ennui and the devil. And I have to spend another night in Albany. But, you know, that changed when the Capitol went up. Then suddenly Albany became a tourist attraction. O Albany, which is a kind of an impressionistic history of the city. It was an ambitious project. It was 26 articles. It covered the whole ethnic history of the city and every geographic neighborhood and a lot more. And it sold extremely well all over the country. It was an unusual development, and it's been selling ever since. It's a phenomenon that I don't quite understand, but what I discovered was what a fantastic town this is. And I had left Albany and really never wanted to come back. I'd come back for the family, but when the circumstances brought me back, and then I got thrust into this situation, and so I started to see what an epic history this city has. It's the second oldest chartered city in the country in the 17th century, and it's been it's got a history as long before the Revolution as it has had since. It was a central meeting place for all those revolutionaries during the American Revolution. Washington was in town all the time. Lafayette, Philip Schuyler, one of the great generals of the Revolution, who lived in Albany, and so on. Benjamin Franklin, and so on, and so on, and so on. And in the history of those years, and then in the early 19th century, Albany became the terminus of the Erie Canal, the way west. I mean, we'd always been a crossroads. We were at the end of the river. Henry Hudson came up the river in 1607, and he couldn't go any further than these rocky bottomed shallows, and what was where he dropped anchor turned out to be Albany eventually. Albany is like all of the great eastern cities in its formations. All of the European immigration, the Dutch first, and then the English, and then the Germans, and then the Irish. They came in fantastic numbers into New York, Philadelphia, Boston, and so on, and Albany. Albany had so many Irish that they couldn't handle it during the famine, and they stopped it. They closed our borders and would not let any more people in. There were so many people coming into the city. And eventually the Irish became dominant in the 19th century and in numbers. In 1875 census, I think it showed that 1 in 6 Albanians was born in Ireland. Add to this the politics, that Albany was always a political city. Even in the Dutch colonization, it was a rebellious city. In the time of the English, likewise, when we have the Revolution, plotters and schemers and drafters of the Constitution gathering in Albany, Franklin's Albany Plan of Union. And so it went through the years. One of the great politicians of all time in this state, in this country, was the mayor of Albany. He had uninterrupted success from the time he was elected in 1942 until he died in hospital of emphysema in 1983. 11 terms, uninterrupted. And that's the longest running mayor of any city in the United States. And he was very proud of that achievement. He was part of this fantastic political machine which took power away from the Republicans in 1921. And the key figure in that was an Irishman, Dan O'Connell. It was 4 O'Connell brothers, and there were a couple of Corning brothers. Erastus Corning's father was one of them, and they founded the new Democratic Party, and they took the city back from the Republicans that had run it since 1899. And when they took it in 1921, they never let go. It's still in power. The succession has been on through the deaths of the 2 people who were the key perpetuators of the machine. Dan O'Connell died in 1977, and Erastus 6 years later, and after that came Tommy Whalen, who was chosen as his successor by Corning, by Erastus, and then now Jerry Jennings succeeded Tommy Whalen, who died, who served for 10 years and then quit, and then he was succeeded in a primary, and that was unheard of, because you never contravened the choices of the political boss, Dan O'Connell. He was an absolute major power who did not share his power, and he ran a very tight ship, and he was the most incredible politician. James McGregor Burns said that, the historian, he said, you know, what we really should do is put this political machine into fully, as it exists right now, into the Smithsonian Institution, so we know what a boss machine is all about. And so, but after Tommy Whalen came into power, he changed everything. He opened up the city. It was no longer the boss machine. And Jerry Jennings is in the same. They run an open city, and it's not at all the kind of Tammany Hall politics that Albany was famous for. It was, a notable target constantly through the whole 20th century, through the 80s. Target for reformers, and especially Republican reformers. When the governors got into power, Thomas E. Dewey tried to make his way to the White House on the backs of the Albany politicians, and he failed. Nelson Rockefeller investigated the Albany political machine, and he failed. And the machine went on and on and on. But it was, who knows how many elections they stole, and the graft was extraordinary. And but it was the consolidation of power of the ethnic groups that had been coming into this country. They were all part of this mosaic that came to be this political machine, but by and large it was run by these two guys, an Irishman and a Connecticut Yankee. It's the history of the city that's in the subtitle. Fearless ethnics and political wizards, underrated scoundrels. And we still have a lot of those. And but it's a different town now. I mean, it's no longer just Albany. Albany is it's about 5 or 6 towns all put together. It's Troy, it's Schenectady, it's Colony, it's Cohoes, it's Saratoga. Saratoga's only half an hour away. And these are great places to live and to see. There's a lot to see in this town. Town is coming back. It's also a beautiful town. It's a really beautiful town. And a lot of people know it now. It doesn't have that reputation anymore that Stanford White thought it had.